Hey, what up? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tonic podcast. I'm excited to announce that today we are going to be speaking with an old friend of mine and just all around kind of a driven and fascinating guy. His name is John Dewald, and he is the president and co founder of Belly Brasil. It's a 501c3 charitable organization that is working to basically end world hunger and combat climate change, which are quite cool things to be doing. And John founded Full Belly in 2020 after completing his Fulbright grant in Brazil. And John graduated from Claremont McKenna College in 2017, and he's basically lived abroad since. He speaks English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So, yeah, there's just a lot of things going on here. I've met John before in a multitude of foreign countries, and it's just kind of cool to see what he's doing. So, yeah, John, let's start off. How's it going? I gave a quick little background there, but I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more on, what got you to start Full Belly Brazil, and how's that going?
Well, awesome, Alex. Thank you so much. Super excited to be here. I am definitely a fan of your show, so it's cool to actually be online. And like Alex said, we've been friends since like 5, 6, 7 years old. So thank you again. Nice to meet you, Drew. I started Full Belly Brazil with a friend of mine named Jorge Ferreira. He's a Rio de Janeiro local. And he was actually working in the same university that I was when I was doing Fulbright. It's called the UFOP, Universidade Federal do Ouro Preto, or the Federal University of Ouro Preto. And when I was down there, maybe I guess now it would be 2 Octobers ago, it's the October of 2019, Georgie came to me with this super cool idea. He'd met this awesome woman named Carol, who was working for an NGO and really trying to help hunger in Brazil. Hunger in Brazil used to be kind of the prime example in Latin America of how to fix your hunger problems. So a lot of people have stopped paying attention. And then within the last 5 years, the situation has gotten far worse. And numbers just came out that as of December of 2020, so this was before the global pandemic, over 55% of the country is living in food insecurity, so they don't have enough to eat on a regular basis. Wow. And then since the pandemic, there's been over 9 million lost jobs, a lot of decreased employment opportunities and things like that. So unfortunately, hunger's only gotten a lot worse. But when Georgie came to me after meeting Carol, COVID wasn't a thing yet, but he was telling me how he met this awesome woman that was doing this great work and that he'd really like to do something himself, but that he wanted to have a more environmental angle on it. And so we talked and we started brainstorming and we started doing our research. And in Brazil, like the States and like many other countries, there's high quantities of food waste. And so it doesn't seem like a super complex or novel idea, but what we wanted to do is get food that would otherwise be thrown away, but is still good to eat, and use it to feed families in need. And so we started doing our research, we started laying our groundwork, and then last July, I got an email to apply to this fellowship called the IIE Centennial Fellowship, which is a highly selective fellowship. You have to apply, you have to have done a Fulbright scholarship within the last 5 years. That year it was different, and instead of the normal parameters for the grant, it was to do a program to help with COVID relief in the country you serve Fulbright in. And while feeding families doesn't directly fall into like providing people with medical supplies or things like that, we did see that many people were going hungry as a cause of COVID. So we saw it as COVID aid. Unfortunately, we did not win the grant, but all of the information we had to get and all of the things we had to build to apply to the grant, we realized we really do have a great idea and we can probably find funding elsewhere. So we decided to register as a 501c3, which is a fancy way to say that the IRS recognizes our NGO or our charity as being legit. And so if people donate to us, we can offer people tax deductions for those donations. So the federal government says these guys are doing good work. We trust them. They're not, doing anything shady. And once we got that set up, we were really able to go to work. We've worked mainly based on private donations and some crowdfunding support as well. And we now have projects set up in 6 different cities in Brazil. We have projects set up in Rio de Janeiro, another city called Duque de Caxias, which is in the Rio de Janeiro state. In Sao Paulo, another city called Campinas, which is in the Sao Paulo state. We're in Belo Horizonte, which is in the state of Minas Gerais, and we're opening projects in Ouro Preto as well. So this area geographically in Brazil is considered the southeast. We're working there because that's where we live and that's where we have contacts. We're developing our model with plans of moving to the north and northeast of Brazil, where hunger is an even bigger issue. Our main model is we work directly with food distributors. A law was passed in 2020 that allows food that would otherwise be thrown away because it's about to expire or even because it is expired to be provided to people going hungry, and you don't have to worry about facing any legal repercussions. That being said, we don't provide food that has already expired. We make sure by the time the people that we are helping get the food, it has yet to expire. Because a lot of grocery distributors can't sell food to a grocery store if it's going to expire within 3 weeks, and especially not within 3 days. So we partner with these groups or with these distributors, and it's kind of touch and go because they don't really know what food they're not going to sell. And so we'll just get a call, and sometimes it's, hey, we have 20 pounds. Sometimes it's, hey, we have close to 2,000 pounds. And we have to get it organized to get that food from point A to point B and distribute it in the favelas or the communities we work in. One of the ways this works so well is our team in Brazil, minus myself, is completely Brazilian. So speaking Portuguese is not a problem. Knowing how things work in the country is not a problem. Having realistic solutions to actual problems is not a problem. Sometimes to do that, though, we do, because with that food waste, it's not a constant stream. Sometimes we get a bunch for 2 weeks, and then sometimes there'll be a week or two where we don't really get many food donations that way. We do supply food baskets to families in need as well. So they do have, well, we're not providing them with every meal, then they do have a steady supply to help them out. So we're not helping one day and then disappearing the next. In addition to that, we're also developing some water projects. The state of Minas Gerais, what we live in, Minas Gerais means general mines, and there's a bunch of industrial mining there. Unfortunately, some of the practices by some of the countries companies have led to high contamination with heavy metals in drinking supplies. Especially, they call them the dam disasters. There were some dams holding back not water, but toxic sludge filled with industrial mining residue. The dams weren't built very well. They broke, and it really wreaked havoc on some local communities, including some indigenous communities. So we're working with those communities to find ways to provide them with a more long-term water filter instead of just endless streams of bottled water. My business partner, Georgie, is the lead on the water project, and he's actually working with that UFOPI, the Federal University of Ouro Preto, to develop and design a environmentally friendly water filter. He's been working with sugarcane bagasse, which is a waste product used when people process sugarcane, but he's now starting to experiment with some other products so we can have a cheap and readily available filter to help these people out. So that's kind of our main focus, is to help with food and water. That being said, we do really care about the environment. So we are helping, we partner with a lot of local NGOs in Brazil, and our focus with them is really cutting back single-use plastics. Because hunger is a major issue. A lot of people don't think as much about environmental impacts. And we like to think that you can help solve one problem without contributing to another. So instead of every time you deliver a food or like a meal to someone, it's not in a plastic container with a plastic fork in a plastic bag. And sometimes on our projects we do use plastic, but it's always reused. So people are coming to us with a grocery bag that they got at the store, brought home, and then come to us with. So we're not using any single-use plastics or anything like that. Outside of Brazil, we also have two different environmental initiatives. One is called the 20,000 Trees campaign. And what we're doing is we're incentivizing and helping organize the planting of 20,000 trees. For every tree you plant, a mature tree takes around 43 pounds of CO2 from the atmosphere every year. And a lot of trees live for a very long time. So the goal is to help people plant those trees. And instead of what I've been doing personally is reaching out to a bunch of schools, different environmental groups, also just some environmentally minded individuals and asking them for help. And one of the cool things is instead of just planting a tree, what we say, it's kind of like the idea of matching a donation. If you go and plant a tree, we'll donate an extra pound of organic food to a family in need. And we've noticed that by just adding that extra incentive, groups that maybe were going to plant 50 trees all of a sudden want to plant 100. Or school groups are, you know what, our environmental club was more focused on this and we weren't really getting anything done. Yeah, let's change over, and that sounds awesome. Let's go try to plant some trees. So that way we can help combat climate change and also feed families in need. The other environmental initiative is the Clean Coast campaign. I'm actually in Honduras right now working to set that up with our pilot project. I'm in this little island they call it Utila. It was actually colonized, or not I guess it would have been colonized, but settled by British pirates.
Yeah, definitely colonized.
Yeah, there weren't I don't think there were people living here at the time. But yeah, so British pirates kind of showed up, and so the descendants were English speaking, hence Utila and not Utila, even though it is Honduras. But there's some really cool dive centers here. One called UDC, or Utila Dive Center, that has this program called Go Eco. They're very involved in beach cleanups. They have coral nurseries where they rescue coral that's going to die on the reef. They bring it back to health and grow it, and then they replant it. And we're getting involved with them. Similar idea with the trees, but for every 10 pounds of plastics removed from a beach cleanup, we'll donate an extra pound of organic food to a family in need. We're not we don't have funds that we're kind of holding ransom until people clean the beach. Instead, we have donors that like these ideas and back the projects. And then the final thing is simply by recovering food waste, we're actually helping combat climate change as well. I didn't realize it, but if food waste were to be a country, it would actually be the third biggest contributor to greenhouse gas behind China and the United States.
Holy cow.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. Food waste produces a high level of methane, which when measured on a 20-year scale is 84 times more potent than CO2. When measured on 100, which is nuts. When measured on a 100-year scale, it's 20 times more potent. But I'm in the kind of point of view that we need to be looking at the 20-year scale right now. The 100-year scale is probably a little bit too late.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of information, but that's kind of the base of what's going on. Georgie and I are very motivated. We're doing everything we can. We have a team of interns and volunteers in the States to help with fundraising and networking and grant writing and researching and things like that. We also have a large team of volunteers in Brazil to actually help get food from one place to the other, help us meet. They're called community leaders, but it's pretty much individuals in the favelas that have taken a leadership role and know which families need more help than others, so they make sure we get the food to the right people, and that none of the food is, disappearing along the way or things like that. But that's kind of what we're doing. We're still relatively new, but things are going very well, and we're very excited for the future.
Super cool, man. I'd love to dive in a little bit more. So, first off, one thing I really think is really dope is the fact that you're not trying to create another problem by solving one, right? And kind of having that idea of sustainability. Not just trying to have a constant stream of plastic water bottles, but having a water filter that they can use for a long period of time sustainably. I think that's super cool, and I think that a lot of charities need to focus more on that, as how to not just solve one problem with the one line, but kind of grasp a larger umbrella of issues and make sure that they're all kind of working in tandem. Super cool. So I wanted to go back to, you mentioned a little bit about how Brazil was a little bit overlooked by NGOs for a while, because you said it was actually one of the better places, like did not have hunger issues for a while, but then in the last 5 years that has changed. Can you give insight as to what has changed that has led to Brazil becoming an issue with hunger?
Yeah, so it's a couple different things. One is there was a political change.
This is a political podcast if you want to get into it. I don't want to put you in a corner you don't want to talk on something, but this is a political podcast, so we can get into it.
As an NGO, I'm not allowed, or representing an NGO, I'm
Sure.
not allowed to represent any political beliefs. But the new political party has gotten rid of many different grants and programs that helped families in need.
Okay.
The biggest one was called Bolsa da Familia, or the Family Grant, and that was a grant that families that didn't make enough money and were living in extreme poverty, so like less than $2 a day, could get some basic staples to be supplemented. That's been eliminated. The economy has also had a major downturn, and so the real, that's the currency there, the real, the real. When I first got to Brazil at the start of 2019, it was around 4 reais to $1. And people were already complaining that the real was getting weaker. Now it's more than 5.5 reais to $1.
Wow.
So in 2 years, the currency has already devalued close to 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, so just these, major economic problems, in addition to lack of government support, also lack of foreign groups being as interested, because Brazil did a very good job fixing a lot of the problems themselves. That leads to when all of a sudden those problems come back, it's going to take a couple more years for Brazil to be on the map again of this place that really could use help. To me, that is my point of view. That's what I think is going on. Especially, there's a lot of really cool local NGOs in Brazil, and big groups too, like in the States. Their funding has plummeted. So they can't do as much work. That's kind of my thought.
I just to follow up, I'm gonna try to keep grabbing for straws here on politics for a second. Like this is kind of general, and I know what you guys are doing is awesome, but I'm curious, like, is there any help in Brazil with the government? Because Bolsonaro, I've been following it as much as I can, and it seems like he's kind of blatantly obstructing the government's response to COVID, between denying Pfizer vaccines off from the beginning to this rhetoric that is just anti-vax, anti-social distancing. I saw last week in Sao Paulo, they opened up restaurants and stadiums. How do you guys work with trying to bring aid to people when it seems like the government is just blatantly trying to obstruct it?
Yeah, so it's very complicated. Unfortunately, on a lot of our projects, we have to run things with the bare minimum number of volunteers right now because of COVID. And as a new NGO, that's the opposite of what we want to do. Even if someone isn't super helpful, we would love to bring them along, even just to observe what we're doing, so they can get excited about it and tell people. And that way more people receive our message and we can help more people. There's a chance we can fundraise more, we can network better. But yeah, so with COVID, we've really had to bring less people. I know in Brazil, we're actually in the process of registering as an NGO in Brazil as well. Where in the U.S., their government will provide, or our government will provide, tax donation or tax deductions to donations. Brazil's set up where its larger corporations can donate to Brazilian NGOs that have been open and running and approved for at least 2 years. And then those major corporations receive tax deductions. So similar idea, slightly different system. That still functions, but we're at least 2 years away from that. We have not. Most of our fundraising is coming from the States, and that was kind of our business model. Most of our volunteers and the food comes from Brazil. As based on like, I think that the response to COVID in Brazil has definitely not been optimal. Less than, or according to my friends there, and this is the issue, is because you go and you see Bolsonaro give a speech, and he says that Brazilians are receiving X amount of dollars every month. I have not met a single Brazilian that has received any stimulus money.
Damn.
So, yeah. So there's, and like my friends tell me that around 5% of the population is vaccinated. There is a major anti-vaccine movement. There is a major movement that still thinks COVID isn't real. And some of the politicians that are coming out and saying we need to get vaccines, we need to wear masks, or maybe be smart when we go out to eat and things like that. Some of them have had fireworks shot at their houses. Because not all, but some of Bolsonaro's supporters are radical and take things very far. So the situation is very complicated. Luckily for us, we're not presenting ourselves as an NGO that's trying to end COVID. While we do, depending on the audience, say we are doing COVID aid, because we are, a lot of the people that are going hungry because they've lost their jobs because of COVID. We're simply feeding the hungry. And so we do our best to stay away from trying to pick one side or the other.
Sure.
And just help people that need help.
I respect that. What do you think, your organization does really well that you think you maybe do better than other organizations? I'm not trying to I'm not trying to ask you to put down on the other organizations, but what's something that you feel that your organization does uniquely or does really well?
Yeah, no, completely. And thanks for phrasing it that way. Something that we do that's really cool is we're really two countries with one mission. It's not a group from the States trying to come in and fix Brazil.
Sure.
But it is a group that has people from the States that have access to different skills or different fundraising or grant opportunities that Brazilians aren't going to have access to. And also before I moved to Brazil, I spent a lot of time traveling the world, volunteering for a lot of different NGOs, doing for-profit work that was also service-oriented. So I have seen lots of different systems. I have some good ideas of what doesn't work. I have some good ideas of what does work. Something else we do very well is we move very quickly. Our kind of business model is being as nice and personable as possible, and just making friends with everyone we go, which in the States sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't seem like this super cool, wow, that's what's going to make it for them. But business in Brazil is a little bit different. A handshake goes a little bit farther there. A smile goes a little bit farther there. And we've done a really good job just getting our message out there and meeting the right people and spreading very quickly. A lot of the NGOs we partner with that have been around for 3, 4, 5+ years, sometimes they send us their volunteers to help with our projects, and their volunteers cannot believe the quantity of food we provide. They say it's a big deal when, sometimes on their projects, they're psyched about getting 20 to 30 pounds of food. A lot of our projects fall in the 1,000 to 2,000 pounds of food range. The other day, we just organized for the next couple months another 12,000 pound order. So we're able to work with bulk, which is something that NGOs more from the States have because they have more funding, but we're able to distribute it in a way that Brazilian NGOs do, where they don't have to spend extra money because we know people that know people, so we get it for cheaper. A lot of our food donations are free. So we'll spend $6 to send 800 pounds of food, or $12. Because of that, it brings our price down. So a donation of $1 can provide around 10 meals to a family in need. a meal is 1.2 pounds, so that's $1 going to around 12 pounds of food. I cannot think of a grocery store I can go to buy that. So that's something really cool that we do.
Super cool, man. Super cool.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree that this happened fast for you guys, because I think I saw you back in October when you were back in the States visiting, and you were mentioning, that this was in the process, and you were kind of, mentioning different aspects of this, and I'm like, this is going to be cool to see. And before I know it, flash forward to like January or December, and I'm just like, holy crap, like you guys have done so much in that period of time. And so like there is an expedited fashion to this, which I think is really cool, because from what I've gathered, like a lot of NGOs, they seem to kind of be bogged down by either like regional or global issues and bureaucracy a lot of the time. So it's kind of cool to see that it looks like you guys kind of got out of the lines with that and did a lot. Now, probably the last question I have for you and myself is that, like, I think it's pretty clear at this point that poverty and climate change are global, right? And you're obviously talking about how you're in Honduras right now, working on what was the Clean Coast Initiative. That's the one you're working on there, right?
Yeah.
So would this whole process, do you think it would be focused in Latin America, or do you see it kind of going more global, like trying to bring these type of issues to groups like the UN or whatever else, like to be more of a global movement? I don't know.
So we would love to go global. Food, it's a little bit more complicated because we need to do it in a country where there's a law that protects us recovering food.
Right.
Some countries, we just can't do that. That being said, if we do get those water filters set up to the point where they're easy to replicate, we would love to go global. I personally have more experience in Latin America, so that is a part of the world that I would love to help. Georgie really thinks that Asia, Southeast Asia in particular, places like Cambodia and Vietnam, Laos, would be great places to go, because they have many communities there have high levels of arsenic or things like that in their drinking water. So my thought realistically is we're definitely going to spend a couple more years just getting everything's fully set up in Brazil, and then look to see if we just continue to build in Brazil and really be that group that does Brazil, hopefully, and or seeing if we can spread internationally, the name Belly Brasil, so it'd be awesome if the country, we'd like to full belly Bali, full belly Bolivia.
Right.
We like the alliteration, but in a serious way. I have volunteered in Bolivia. There's some awesome work going on there. It would be super to be part of that. I've worked for a company that was doing a global health initiative in Bali. It would be super cool to go be a part of that. And it's, we don't even have a year yet. So it's too young for us to, we're too young of a country to really know that yet. But our eyes are definitely on the prize. We're going for it, and hopefully, I can be back on here in a year or two, and we can talk more about that and have a lot more statistics and a lot more names and places to drop.
Absolutely, man. I what you're doing sounds really cool. I encourage all of our listeners to definitely check it out. Full Belly Brasil, and it's Brazil with an S, not the Z. I just wanted to just for fun. I also know that I think I saw on your profile that you've been to Nicaragua and you did like tours on volcanoes.
Yeah.
I happened to be in Nicaragua to go on a tour on a volcano, and then I got sick, so I missed the volcano. But Nicaragua was a beautiful country, and I stayed at Managua. What was your favorite spot in that country?
So I love Nicaragua. I was in León, which is very close to Managua. And I was volunteering for this company called Quetzal Trekkers. They are an NGO, and their volunteers take people on hikes, usually 2-day hikes, sometimes longer, on volcanoes. Just a bunch through there because it's part of the Ring of Fire.
Right.
And then all of the money, it's an umbrella organization, kind of gets filtered to local NGOs to help kids going hungry. There's a lot of, unfortunately, adolescents addicted to huff and glue because it's cheap to buy. These are kids living on the street. It also makes your hunger go away. So, you're not hungry if you huff glue and then you get addicted to it. And then different educational programs. I loved Leon. Volcano-wise, one of my favorite ones to lead was El Hoyo, because there's this little volcano called Cerro Negro right next to it. So you could take people up that. They volcano board down. You go up and spend the night on El Hoyo. And you are able to see the Pacific Ocean. You're able to see Lake Managua. You're able to see this other volcano called Momotombo, which there's a lot of smoke pouring out the top. And you can see the sunset down over the Pacific.
Awesome.
Absolutely stunning. The sunrises there are incredible. If you look the other direction, you can see Volcan Telica, which is another cool one that we used to do hikes on. You can actually stick your head over the crater and see magma or lava. You can see San Cristobal, which is the highest volcano in Nicaragua. And on a very, very clear day, you can see to Honduras.
Nice.
But no, Nicaragua is an incredible country. If you do want to talk about politics real fast, I was there at the end of 2018. Not the end.
So there was
the spring of 2018. Yeah, it was so bad. I have a lot of friends there, and I was in Honduras when it happened, when things started going out, and they were calling me there's people in the streets with machetes and chains breaking things. And I at first oh my God, that sounds crazy. Why are they doing that? And things died down after a week, and I bust across Honduras into Nicaragua. And just based on general violence, statistics on violence, I thought once you got from Honduras into Nicaragua, it was going to be a lot more relaxed. But the Honduran driver all of a sudden got super scared once we got into Nicaragua. Oof. And just left me in the street in the night, and I had to bang on the door to get my buddy to wake up. Wow. And it was crazy. The government had when they, it's the Sandinista movement.
Right, Daniel Ortega, right?
Yeah, and so when Ortega came to power, the country was super pro-Ortega. He got rid of Somoza, yep. Who referred to Nicaragua as his little ranch. And Ortega was really supposed to be saving the people and doing all this great stuff. And I don't know a ton about it, but from what I've heard is he did do some good stuff for a while, and then was in power for a long time. And, the country's very, 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 very poor. And the final straw, and people do protest in Latin America from what I'm seeing a little bit more than in the States, but they cut pension while they were also doing some government projects to build what people considered stupid statues in Managua and these metal trees and stuff. And people started protesting, and the protests turned violent, and it turned into sticks, stones, and machetes versus machine guns.
Yeah.
And a reporter was shot in the head. A guy from the States was murdered when he went to go help a friend. My friends were sending me videos of just people running around with cell phones, filming people bleeding out in the streets. My personal experience it wasn't that crazy. I didn't get shot at all, but I would be out in the streets, and all of a sudden it would go so quiet, and there would be 100 people, men and women, with crowbars and machetes in the street, and they were going to go burn down a building. And most of my friends supported the protesters. And from what they told me, I supported my friends. The government had closed all the grocery stores to starve people out and to force them to go raid the grocery stores, to say that, look at these crazy protesters, they're raiding the grocery stores. No, the government closed them, so people had no food. If all the food shut down and I was going hungry, I would probably myself try to go get some food. Yeah, but so that was really nuts. I was trying to bus down south to Costa Rica. All of the roads were closed because one of the worst places to be was Masaya, which is a city a little to the south of Managua. And the main road down through Costa Rica goes there, and I could not get anyone to take me. I ended up having to get to Managua and buying a flight from Managua to San Jose, Costa Rica, and having to hide out in some kind of low establishment hotels because there were protests moving through the city, And so I had the time getting to the airport. One protest would pass, I get a taxi, take me as far, and then I'd have to like stop again and wait. My understanding of what happened there is the protesters eventually gave up. It was violent. A lot of people were going hungry. They were recruiting people that were going hungry to have, be part of the military or the group suppressing the protesters. And people care about their families. I cannot blame anyone for that at all. But elections are coming up, and I've heard that the situation there is starting to get pretty
intense.
Yes,
it's not good.
Yeah, that's funny, man. It's just a small world because I was there not in 2018. I was there in 2015. But it's just funny to think that I could have been on that hike to go on the volcano and met you, and then I got sick. But no, so Nicaragua is certainly a beautiful country. I mean, the government's causing all sorts of problems. When I was there, Daniel Ortega was just starting to change the constitution to allow himself to be in power longer. And I remember that was the conversation. People were like, "This is kind of sketch. This is kind of a little weird." But he was just starting to really get into that authoritarian position. But anyway, and I've also done that drive from Managua down to down the west side towards Costa Rica. When you go in that isthmus between the lake and the ocean, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. What's up, Alex?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I was hoping I could tie the knot on this here with I would just say that, like, John, you mentioned that since Bolsonaro in Brazil, became president, there were a lot of like policy issues on the ground that changed, right? And it makes me think about this Nicaragua experience, or in Bolivia after Evo Morales left, like similar issues in which it seems like Latin America and all of the Americas in general, minus the U.S. maybe, are kind of stuck in this forced pendulum shift because of the international influences on these elections and on the ideologies. You just kind of have this shift to me from like far right nationalism to like far left socialism. And like, I feel like it's so hard to, and so I applaud you for doing this, with this NGO, because I feel like almost every year you could have a complete shift in the policies and the safety and dynamics of the country you're in. And it just seems crazy. So I applaud you for doing it, because someone needs to, and also I'm going to have to talk to you about those tax deductions if I donate. So.
Well, cheers to that, Alex. We can definitely talk.
Just kidding.
Alex, do you want to wrap this up? I think we do gotta get on out
absolutely.
here. Yeah, do a little conclusion. But yeah, thank you again for coming on. It's super cool what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And as always, you guys can find John at Full Belly Brasil. It's on Instagram. If you guys have Facebook, John, do you guys have a YouTube yet?
We do. We're just getting up, but we have a YouTube. We have one video on there. We have our website, and it's Brazil is spelled with an S because that's how they spell it in Portuguese. That's how they spell it in Brazil. We're not trying to show up and be that group from the States that spells their country wrong.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the shout out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our listeners, you can always find the podcast as usual on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, all those random third-party sites, which I don't even know half them exist. But anyways, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure. I think Drew and I are going to book some tickets down to that island you're on. Let's all go get vaccinated and do some scuba diving, right?
No COVID. I'm sold.
Cheers
But anyways, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back next week.